So now the land has been divided, the inheritance has been given, the tribes, for varying degrees of success, have moved into their land. And here's the key, the last one to get his inheritance is the guy who the book's named after. This flies in the face of everything we know about the ancient Near East. In the ancient Near East, the warlord, the general, the king, the ruler, they get first dibs. They get the best of the land. They get what they want, and they give the rest. In Joshua, God gives the land because it's God's land. It's not Joshua's land and it's not Israel's land. It's never been anyone's land but God's. God gives the land. God divides the land up. The last person to receive his inheritance is Joshua. That is such a mark of servant leadership because Joshua 2.0, what's he going to say? 1,000 years later, 2,000 years later almost, about 1,400 years later, give or take. What's the next Joshua going to tell his followers? Those who will to be first will be last. The last will be first. Servant leadership modeled by Joshua, ultimately modeled by Yeshua. But I love that. I love that. Can I tell you a pet peeve of mine with churches? I'm going to tell you anyway because this is my study. My pastor always says that. Can I tell you? Well, I'm going to tell you because I'm preaching. I hate when I go to churches. Now, I'm not judging the people. I'm just saying the practice, the concept. This irks me. Unless it's in a packed, dense, urban area, I hate when I see pastors' parking signs. Or even worse, First Lady parking signs. Because I grew up, my dad's a preacher, and every Sunday he drove to the church and drove to the farthest spot in the parking lot. And it was a big parking lot. And that's where he parked. He did that because why? Because he knew that servant leadership, that's what pastor means, is servant. And if he parks in the front space, that's one less space for a potential visitor that could be coming to church that day. Or one less space for somebody who's running late and needs a spot and can't find one, they decide to go home. Just the concept of thinking about that. But it's so foreign to many churches because in many churches, and I'm not beating up the church. I go to a large church, and large churches can do amazing things, and small churches can do horrible things. So it's not about size, it's not about denomination, but just the practice that permeates. You see it in large churches, you see it in small churches. The practice of elevating leaders to the point of celebrities and then treating them like the celebrities are treated in the world, or CEOs, or any of those other things, is totally antithetical to the gospel of Jesus, and as we see here, to the gospel of Joshua. So, if you go to a church and they do have, a pastor has his own parking space, you can keep going to church there. I'm not blasting the church. What I'm saying is, just know that that's a blind spot. Just know that that's something that, maybe that, and usually it's not even the pastor doing it. I know of preachers in Methodist churches. I'm Methodist. They get moved around church to church, and they come to churches and they arrive at a church that already has a pastoral parking spot. But all the Methodist pastors that I know that I really love, the first thing they do when they get there is take that thing down. Because that's saying something. It's saying, this is the kind of leader I intend to be. So little things, little things like that, speak to it. And Joshua, I love that this chapter ends that way. Joshua completely does away with this whole cult of personality. And yes, he's a leader. Yes, he's important. Yes, he's upheld, but he's the last one. He makes sure that everybody's got theirs before he gets his. And that's a mark of a leader. The boss is the one who gets his first and then everybody else. God doesn't want bosses. He wants leaders. And so in that we see that in Joshua. All right.